Welcome everyone to Yissilmissil Productions channel. My name is Steven Yissel, and today we are doing part 12 of our deep dive series into the Bermuda Triangle. And we are reading the final chapter of the Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz. Chapter 9. So we're finally at the end of this book. I'm so happy we've gotten to the end. Not that I was looking forward to finishing it, but that we are being thorough. This is what this deep dive series is about. And I'm very happy with how things are going. So I do want to mention that we have a new deep dive series we'll be starting that's very similar to this series called the Great Lakes Triangle. And I might show the intro as a teaser at the end of today's show. But we're going to try to keep this to an hour. I believe we can. There's about 8 pages in this chapter 9. And it is titled The Watchers, Protectors, Raiders, or Indifferent Observers. So, last time we were here, we were looking at rock art in different parts of the country. It was just something that came up in the last chapter. I have the same slideshows from the past several shows, so if you're sick of them, too bad. I'll get some new stuff eventually, but I think these are really important to show because this is what was used to search the area of the Bermuda Triangle, and it found sunken cities essentially. So I'm not sure if we have alright. So before we start reading, I just want to make sure we have our music in the background. And I'm kind of surprised here that I didn't have it. So I had to move a few things around with OBS. If you guys noticed, I'm able to do shows with Zoom through OBS. So I had my first successful show yesterday with that. And I'm really looking forward to doing more interviews in this format where you not only get high quality audio here from me on OBS, but also the picture quality is a lot better than streaming directly through Zoom. So I'm glad that we were able to upgrade in a sense when we did our interview yesterday with Nadine. So if you haven't checked that out, go check it. It's a real eye-opener of what's going on in the United States here with manipulated weather and disasters, which we could be having manipulated weather with Bermuda Triangle too, for all we know. If it wasn't before, it definitely is now. So yeah, we'll be starting reading shortly. Just give me a second here. I'm not sure how this is going to sound either, so just... Okay. I think we're about ready now. All right. Chapter 9. The Watchers, protectors, raiders, or indifferent observers. If planes, ships, and people are being kidnapped, especially from the Bermuda Triangle and from other areas of the world, by UFOs or other means, an important factor of any investigation should be the consideration of a possible reason or reasons. Some researchers have suggested that intelligent entities, light years scientifically advanced over the comparatively primitive peoples of the Earth, have been engaged throughout the centuries in observing our progress and will eventually intervene to prevent us from destroying our own planet. And I actually heard that same concept talked about earlier today in a reel with Stephen Greer, which I'm not sure what to make of him at this point. He's possibly controlled opposition. Always have to be vigilant with that stuff. This would, of course, presume the existence of an altruistic nature on the part of beings from inner or outer space, a feature not always dominant among explorers or pioneers. On the other hand, it may be that there exists in the vicinity of the Bermuda Triangle and certain other nodal locations of electromagnetic gravitational currents, a door or window to another dimension in time or space through which extraterrestrials sufficiently sophisticated scientifically can penetrate at will, but which, when encountered by humans, would represent a one-way street from which return would either be impossible to their level of scientific advancement or would be barred by alien force. Many of the disappearances, especially those concerning entire ship's crews, suggest raiding expeditions ranging from collecting human beings for space zoos, for exhibits of different eras in planetary development, or for experimentation. That's a little unsettling to think about. The first two. Space zoos. Dr. Manson Valentine suggests that there may be various and sometimes inimical groups of space visitors, and that some of these visiting entities coming from space, the oceanic depths, or even another dimension, may be related to us, our own cousins of many thousands of years ago, sufficiently civilized to have an altruistic reason for protecting us and the Earth, or pragmatically concerned for their own environment. From this latter point of view, it is evident that Earth and its populations are in increasingly greater danger of planet-wide ruin and destruction. This situation may already have happened on several occasions in the past millennia, but although the Earth was in danger, it was not made uninhabitable, as may have been the fate of several nearby planets and moons. Memories of near-fatal world catastrophes are still preserved among certain ancient races that have all but disappeared. According to the traditions of several ancient races, there has not been only one global catastrophe, but several. And we were talking about this before. It's been several. It's not just one flood or sound blast, but it's been a series of these things, including the fire in the sky concept too, which there's stories from ancient civilizations of like the dragons. They say that the dragons were the ones that were in the sky, but that could also be the comets that have passed, or if you if you're aware of this concept, the planet X, but I'm not sure where I sit on that as of right now, all things considered. The Indian races of Middle America have counted 3 world endings until now, and are counting on a 4th ending of the world, this time by fire, at a date not too far in the future. The Hopi, who among the Indian tribes in the United States preserve the most complete and oddly detailed record of their wanderings and of the cosmos itself, also tell of 3 previous endings of the world. Once by volcanic eruption and fire, once by earthquakes and the temporary spinning of the world off its axis, and a 3rd time by inundations and sinking of the continents because the warlike inhabitants of the 3rd world were destroying each other's cities by aerial warfare. I'm surprised they didn't say sound weapons yet. Parenthetically, the reference to the Earth spinning off its axis is itself an indication of extraordinary knowledge held by a small Indian tribe, not only of the true shape of the Earth, but of its rotation. The theory of the Earth losing its spin and then readjusting is in accord with a later scientific theory developed by Hugh Auchincloss Brown, who predicates the disturbance of spin to a developing overweight of ice on one of the poles. See, like, this doesn't make sense to me here. Let's play with this concept objectively. You have a ball that's spinning, and it's also moving like this while it's spinning, like is following a trajectory. When it stops spinning, just like when you see like a golf ball get hit in slow motion, you see it like expand and contract. Like if this world would have, or Earth would have did that, there would be so much more destruction than we know. It probably would have broken the whole thing apart. And that's on the concept of it being a globe. But you can see they're using like these overhead maps that are circles. You see this? The one right next to us here? So who knows what the real shape is? Because I'm just saying here that, like, if there was a spin stoppage temporarily, you would lose the so-called shape, that ball shape that they all say it is. Like, with it being pulled in the direction with the sun, so to speak, it would be stretched if it stopped. That's my interpretation of it. Like, there would be a lot more destruction than what they're saying here. It's not just gonna come to a stop like a billiard ball, and it's just gonna maintain its shape and then start spinning again. What's the point of it spinning then? I mean, these are questions we have to ask. Alright, let's continue reading here. Ancient religious legends of India tell of 9 crises of the world, while other cultures of antiquity vary somewhat concerning the number, although not the reoccurring frequency of global catastrophes. Plato, in his dialogue Critias, spelled Critias, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, quotes an Egyptian priest telling the Athenian lawgiver Solon, who was on a visit to Egypt, quote, "There have been, and there will be again, many destructions of mankind arising out of many causes," end quote. After explaining to Solon how the Egyptians, because of their records, had maintained memories of some of these events, he allegedly observed to Solon, quote, "And then, at the usual period, the stream from heaven descends like a pestilence, and thus you have to begin all over again as children. And then in brackets it says, adding as a final thrust at the lack of Greek records. Then it continues on. You remember one deluge only, whereas there were many of them. End quote. The cyclic theory of civilization prevalent in the ancient world and still to a certain extent in Asia is in marked contrast to the progress theory of our own culture, with its preoccupation with the passage and pressure of time and the constantly forward march of civilization and scientific development. As our own knowledge increases, however, we may find that what was suspected by observers in antiquity will be shown to have eventually transpired. World catastrophes and destructions of entire civilizations may have previously resulted from a variety of causes, several of which face us today. However resolutely we may refuse to contemplate them. Outstanding among these is the question of overpopulation, a problem about which one finds mention in the records of antiquity only in the Mahabharata. I always have trouble saying this word here. Mahabharata. As if the Indian subcontinent had suffered then as now from strangling overpopulation. Nuclear warfare, suggested by the records of antiquity and other outstanding dilemma of today, is, of course, one way of inadvertently solving the overpopulation problem, although it carries with it the problem of destroying much of the life on the planet and even damaging its future habitability, as well as, if the atomic reactions are strong enough, causing seismic disasters and eventually floods from the melting ice caps. And what is seismic? Well, it's a reverberation of sound. So they're getting towards it. They're getting closer, but they're not hitting the nail on the head yet in this book here. Other catastrophes may be presently developing even now, unconnected with atomic activity, but linked to technological development, the results of which will only be known with the passage of time. For today, besides our atomic tests, nuclear waste, environmental pollution of air and water, and unbalancing of the ecology, we are unwittingly engaged in several gradual experiments which may eventually have startling consequences. An example of the above may be suggested by the observation of Dr. Columbus Islam, former director of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Discussing the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, he states, quote, "During the last 100 years, the increasing use of fossil fuels in our worldwide industrial civilization should result in the production of about 1,700 billion tons." So why didn't they just say 1.7 trillion? I'm pretty sure that's what we're talking about here. Tons of carbon dioxide, 70% of the amount now in the atmosphere. So I'll reread that again. During the last 100 years, the increasing use of fossil fuels in our worldwide industrial civilization should result in the production of about 1.7 trillion tons of carbon dioxide, 70% of the amount now in the atmosphere. Because about 2/3 of the added carbon dioxide is absorbed by the sea, an increase of perhaps 20% in atmospheric carbon dioxide can be expected. And again, this is written from the 70s, and we really haven't had that much of an increase, and that would do a lot more heating up than what they're predicting with so-called quote climate change. Okay. The effect of such an increase is not easy to predict, but there is reason to believe that it could result in the warming of the lower atmosphere by several degrees. Thus, we are conducting more or less, in spite of ourselves, a great experiment. End quote. So again, there's propaganda infected throughout a lot of this stuff here today. So, as I've said before, use your own discernment. Don't blindly follow everything that we cover here. I do hope you come to your own conclusions on a lot of this stuff. But if you are wanting to follow my line of thinking, that's okay too. But I'm really I'm a student of all of this still. So things I may say on here may be inaccurate. I'm just saying that straight up. But I'm also making sure that we're very thorough with the perspectives that we're exploring here. So, carrying on. The effect of a man-inspired melting of the polar ice, together with tidal waves and flooding of seacoasts throughout the world, is reminiscent of what we now consider to be the far-from-legendary flood of prehistory, which covered surface lands in the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and elsewhere. Even the spillage of oil from one of the increasingly huge supertankers or from an Arctic pipeline may begin a large-scale melting of polar ice with unpredictable effects. You know, something else here that they're not mentioning is that when earthquakes happen, you have to think about even earthquakes that happen on the ocean beds. The water goes somewhere. And if the water came up or got melted in the past, which sank these cities, supposedly sank. Let's say a bunch of water entered from below the crust. It could have been added from an earthquake. I'm under the impression that another giant earthquake or fissure in the ocean floor would reduce the amount of water in the oceans, and it could uncover these old civilizations and these old islands, continents, possibly. And we don't have the entire ocean bed mapped out. It's just not, it hasn't been done yet. And the stuff that we see on Google Earth, Google Maps, it's very heavily edited, and I've looked at it myself several times. I've tried to see what's in the Florida Keys, like what we've been covering here. And it was also mentioned from one of our viewers, Zenray. He told me to look at Dutch Since, which is an earthquake YouTube channel, and I think they're on some other streaming service now, but they are on YouTube still. But they cover a lot of the daily earthquakes. But he had found all of these star forts that are under the water off of the coast around the Florida Keys itself. So we're not really sure what that all means. But from all of our observations here so far, it seems like water was added to this plane. And we don't know how. But if it was added, it could easily be taken away again. Like, just as easily. So that's why I'm saying one major earthquake or several that cause a fissure in the ocean floor. What happens when you have a hole in the bottom of a bucket? It loses water. So all of this fear talk about, everything's going to flood again. We might have the reverse of that happen at some point, completely against what all these people are saying. And so with a reversal of that, I really wonder how, this terrarium that we live in would react to that with less water. And water has a memory to it, and that's a whole topic we can talk about at a later time. But water itself, it has an inherent energy to it. And I wonder what the equilibrium of everything would be if there was less of it on the surface. Because I really think with these fissures, with these earthquakes, that it can take away water from the surface or from the ocean bed floor. Like, it's just going to reduce water at some point. I could see these ancient cities popping back up as dry land. But it's really a hypothetical concept. So I like theorizing about that stuff, but it's definitely something that's possible that could happen in the future. All right, let's continue here. The extinction of so many species of animal life may be another potential source of future disaster about which we cannot yet form an opinion. In a previous catastrophe, it will be remembered that Noah, an ecologist before it became fashionable, while he took 7 pairs of each of the more useful animals aboard the ark, also took 1 pair of each of all the other animals, whether they were useful or not. Perhaps the climb from barbarism to civilization and eventually knowledge and ability to use nuclear fission is, in the case of man and other intelligences, equally equipped. A natural process, and has taken place before, not only on Earth, but in the other parts of the universe. Perhaps other civilized systems, extraterrestrial or even as suggested by Valentine, Sanderson, and others, of this same Earth, although not apparent to us, have triumphed over this urge for self-destruction and are studying our world through such paths or open doors as the Bermuda Triangle, either as an object lesson or to preserve parts of its culture for study or to keep it from destroying itself. That was one long run-on sentence. I needed to cough for that. Perhaps they even plan to guide it, as stronger nations attempt to do with the less developed ones. But to ascribe motives to such observers would be to assume that they think as we do. Wild animals cannot possibly understand why collectors want to trap and exhibit them instead of killing and eating them. Possibly, as has been suggested, the UFOs are simply scouting our planet. If so, they have been at it for an exceedingly long time. And my perspective here is that it's interdimensional. That those things are interdimensional and highly demonic for the most part, especially the Greys. All right. If there is any truth in the hypothesis that alien entities are visiting and observing Earth and collecting information and samples for whatever purpose, especially within the area of the Bermuda Triangle, it is interesting to speculate why this area should be one of special UFO concentration. Sightings of, quote, heavenly, unquote, aircraft in the distant past suggest that they have appeared in areas of cultural and technical development at certain points of apogee, as if to ascertain from time to time where new centers of civilization were developing and whether or not they were potentially dangerous. We have only to note the consequence of ancient reports relating to heavenly visits to Earth by gods or aircraft to discern a vague pattern of shifting emphasis. The first visits described in detail were those to ancient Egypt at the time of Thutmose III and the space trip undertaken by the Sumerian Etana. We have, of course, more detailed indications of extraterrestrial contact in the book of Ezekiel, who related visits to Earth by what appear to be spacecraft on 4 occasions within 19 years, and who on one occasion saw 2 of them, and, like Etana, was himself a passenger, as well as a possible indication in the case of Elijah, who ascended to the heavens in a, quote, fiery chariot, unquote, never to return. From India, we have a memory of space flight in the description of the flight of Rama, and in ancient American references to gods who came in machines from the sky to build Tiahuanaco. Successfully, many of the reports from Greece, Rome, Renaissance Europe, and in our day, an increasing number from all over the world, but especially from the Bermuda Triangle, suggest the possibility that observers seem to be interested in the advance of technological civilization on the Earth, especially as regards air travel, space penetration, and modern warfare. In World War II and the Korean War, a number of Foo Fighters, unidentified lights or objects accompanying bomber or fighter planes in flight, were fairly commonplace, while reported concentrations of UFOs at present seem to be in the vicinity of space travel areas, either because they represent a development of technological potential or a threat to the solar system or part of the universe. I think that these bases that are in Florida, they're there because of the proximity of this area of the Bermuda Triangle. That's why I think they're there. The stuff that they put on for the public is a whole different story. But I think the location of where it's at is tied to whatever energy ley lines are in that area there. I think there's research that's going on at those bases that we don't know about, and everything else is for show. The theories of Ivan Sanderson, however, suggest that the increasing threat to our own ocean environment may be shared by highly developed life forms within the ocean. There appear to have been several startling confirmations, in addition to the instances listed in Chapter 6, of UFO undersea activity having been observed and tracked by U.S. Navy units. These incidents have, as in customary, been depublicized as much as possible except for the initial reports. One of the most striking concerns the tracking of an underwater object moving at over 150 knots, first by a destroyer and subsequently by a submarine during a U.S. Navy exercise southeast of Puerto Rico in 1963 at the southern edge of the Bermuda Triangle. I'm curious to the speed. Let's see here. So a knot is 1.151 miles per hour. Oh, this is going to be easy. Thank you. We're going to see how much is 150 knots here. 1.151 times 150. 172 miles per hour they tracked objects under the sea. Unidentified objects. So these suckers were going fast. As the maneuver was effectively a drill in tracking, it was assumed that the object was part of the exercise, and 13 other Navy craft noted the rapidly moving propelled object and entered the report in their ship's log. It was tracked for a total of 4 days, at times penetrating depths of 27,000 feet while maintaining its incredible speed. It was never ascertained what it was, although most reports agreed that it appeared to be powered by a single propeller. while reports of UFOs emerging from and descending into or operating within the seas have been fairly prevalent in the past. Seldom have they been so closely detected and tracked as in the 1963 maneuvers just described. Sorry about that. Supposing the existence of an older branch of humanity or other civilized life form under the seas, such entities with a vastly greater amount of living space at their disposal than that tenuously held by surface-dwelling civilized life forms such as ourselves, would not have concerned themselves with our actions during the last several millennia. But once our technical potential represented a danger to them and to their environment, their laissez-faire policy might well change, and the Bermuda Triangle phenomena may be a tentative preview or exploratory action prior to something more definitive. Ivan Sanderson suggested that certain unexplained and unpublicized reports of giant undersea transparent domes, some of which had been seen by sponge divers off the coast of Spain and also glimpsed from the surface when underwater visibility was favorable, sorry about that, by lobster fishermen and commercial fishermen on the American continental shelf might be, if not secret defense installations, parts of an undersea grid being constructed by undersea terrestrials for purposes possibly connected with neutralizing the ongoing pollution and poisoning of the sea. Extending this train of thought still further, it would conceivably be possible, as the Earth is essentially an enormous dynamo. Well, ain't that something? Why are they talking like that? You know what a dynamo looks like? And again, they just hit this thing with a... Oh, man. Okay, I'm just saying, like, in this book, they touched on the Earth being just a giant generator of energy. They just say it in passing here. As the Earth is essentially an enormous dynamo, to wire the Earth by laying electromagnetic networks within the oceans and eventually by activating the proper impulses to change the rotation of the Earth. And they had me there for a second. Like, this is really what I was looking for in this book here. Throughout this whole book, as the Earth is essentially an enormous dynamo, to wire the Earth by layering electromagnetic networks within the oceans and eventually by activating the proper impulses. I'll just say to change the Earth. Forget about the rotation here. This tapping of the Earth itself is reminiscent of ancient traditions as well as comparatively new theories regarding the great power sources of Atlantis. The crystal laser complexes, which may lie on the floor of the Sargasso Sea, still partially functioning after thousands of years, and intermittently causing electromagnetic stresses or drains resulting in the malfunction or disintegration of sea and aircraft. Disintegration. So I'm thinking some of the sound energy devices, like some of these things could just make things turn into dust. Like, imagine like an airplane just... Because that's what they're talking about here. Just hit it with the right frequency and it just particleizes. Some scary stuff to think about. But that's the power of sound. And I think this is all connected here with Coral Castle and a lot of other things here. And we're still doing good on time. We're about 40 minutes in here. And we only have a few pages left. So at least like right now, before we get to the end here, I'm thinking that like they got so close to just articulating what we know today, like in this present time, because this book is nearly 50 years old, a little more than that, or almost 50. Or we say 77. But this is from the 1970s, so they still had a lot of the propaganda that they were trying to just sift through while trying to make these factual claims of what happened out at sea. And we have these logs by different people, first-hand accounts, and yeah, they got so close. If they just threw out the whole rotation of the Earth thing, I think they'd be on to something a lot more current to what we're looking at today. Okay, let's continue on here. It is, of course, natural for us to speculate about the reasons for the visits of extraterrestrial beings and to seek to identify their purposes with our own frame of reference. Following this reasoning, it is normal to suppose that the visitors have come to protect us from ourselves, while other less sanguine observers have presumed that the visitors have come not for the purpose of protection, but rather for collection. The latter supposition would seem more logical, considering the number of planes, boats, and ships and their crews that have vanished within the Bermuda Triangle. Dr. John Harder, professor of engineering at Berkeley and investigator of UFOs, recently, and this was October 1973, expressed the unusual, though scarcely flattering, theory that the Earth may be a sort of, quote, cosmic zoo shut off from the rest of the universe, and every so often the keepers make a random sample check of the inhabitants, end quote. So again, they're saying that it's an enclosed system. So they're already playing around with that idea, even though like the established propaganda was already well baked into this whole thing. And this is only a few years removed from the I'll call it the space show, because that's what it was. It was a show. But another suggested theory implies that the visitors are indifferent to humanity, being occupied with their own aims, which as yet we are unable to imagine, and that the apparent casualties, since we still do not definitely know if anyone has died in disappearances, have been caused inadvertently by projection into the field of ionization. This theory has long furnished newspaper and magazine writers with periodic opportunities for titles such as, quote, Lost Atlantis is alive and well and kidnapping ships and planes, end quote. The concept that a laser beam can destroy or atomize a plane is possible, but the idea that power installations or gigantic laser complexes could still function after thousands of years immersion in the sea seems patently ridiculous, as giant lasers, as we conceive them, would have to be maintained and operated. Well, we don't know what type of tech it was, so it very well may be still functional by the time we look them up and everything. However, lasers are comparatively recent development in our world, and it is probable that they will be brought to a much higher degree of perfection in the future. The ultraviolet laser, not yet developed, will have considerably more energy than the X-ray lasers, as will also be the case when lasers operate from stored solar power or presumably, in the instance of Atlantis, power from inside the Earth. Oh, really now. In any event, the highly civilized technological era of the past would not necessarily develop in the same way or in the same order as our own, nor would it be subject to the same restrictions which presently and temporarily limit our still developing technology. In considering the hundreds of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle, one notes that the single common thread which unites them is the fact that the ships and planes have completely vanished, or that the ships have been found without their crews and passengers. While isolated mysteries of this nature could be explained by unusual circumstances or coincidences of weather and human error, so many of the Bermuda Triangle incidents have happened in clear weather, near to port, shore, or landing base, that they seem unexplainable according to our presently held concepts. The history of the Bermuda Triangle encompasses events clouded by the mists of ancient and modern legend, the unexplained and apparently intermittent aberrations of natural forces, and theories of physics as yet unproved, which could revolutionize our previously held concepts. The Bermuda Triangle leads back to lost and sunken lands, to forgotten civilizations, to visitors to the Earth through the centuries from outer or inner space, whose provenance and purpose are unknown. Rather than theorize about explaining the presently unexplainable, it is perhaps easier to say that the Bermuda Triangle exists only in the imagination of mystics, cultists, the superstitious, and the sensational-minded. One of the several commentators who believes that the Bermuda Triangle is nothing more than a coincidence of disappearances, each of which can be separately explained, has observed, quote, "Those who believe in the Bermuda Triangle also believe in sea serpents," end quote. Although the latter epigram is not necessarily a proof that if one does not exist, the other does not either, or that if a sea serpent is finally and satisfactorily identified, then other legends of the sea automatically become more credible. In general, people are unwilling to confront mysteries which cannot be eventually explained, or are incapable of theoretical explanation in terms they can understand. It is more spiritually comforting to be able to recognize what we may face on the perimeter of the physical world than to face an unknown threat. If the phenomenon cannot be explained, the best response is to ignore it. A more reassuring course of action, and in a way, more innocent. I would say more ignorant. But the time of scientific innocence, together with its implied reassurance, has passed, having definitely ended on the morning of July 16th, 1945, at Alamogordo, New Mexico. Alamogordo, New Mexico, when the atomic theory established its own conclusive proof that it was no longer a theory. We now live in a world where the lines of science and parascience are converging, a world where what was once magic or the dreams of magicians has been adopted by science and made acceptable by scientific nomenclature. Biologists can now produce life. Cryogenic biologists will soon be able to preserve human life indefinitely through freezing live bodies. Thought transference of pictures to film has been proven. Huh? Thought transference of pictures to film has been proven. Has it? Why is it the first time I'm hearing about this? The first time it's caught my attention. Thought transference of pictures to film. Are you telling me these people are just thinking of stuff and then putting it on film? Oh, that might be another deep dive for another day. Holy moly. Oh, no way. Okay, we gotta show this. We have to show this. This is kind of spooky, everyone. But we're gonna look. Oh, wow. Photography. Look at that. Oh. Alright, we're going to read this real quick, and then we're going to finish this last... We're on the last page of this book, and they're just throwing this in our lap here. Let's see. Photography, also called projected thermography. Projected thermography. Psychic photography. That's what I thought they were saying. Psychic photography. Nungraphy and nunsha is the claimed ability to burn images from one's mind onto surfaces such as photographic film by parapsychic means. You've got to be freaking kidding me, man. Oh. Oh, I got a lot to learn. I got a lot to learn here. This is the bombshell of the book, if I've ever had one with this series. This is it here. So objectively, we've been looking at like the energy grid and all of that, especially with the Coral Castle series. But that plays into this because the Bermuda Triangle has ley lines through it as well. But what we haven't talked about yet is Edgar Cayce's material and thought phenomenon. And how that plays into all of this. This is incredible. Well, I got a lot more research to do. I tell you that much. I got a lot more to do. Oh. Alright, let's finish this page here. Psychokinesis, the moving of objects by force of will, is no longer a matter for levity, but one for serious experimentation. Telepathy to and from outer space is the subject for experiments by both of the leading space powers. The alchemist's dream, the transmutation of matter, is no longer an impossibility, and the only impediment to transmuting quantities of lead into gold is that it would be too expensive. And they have a quote, an exclamation point, but in between parentheses. I guess what they're saying is like the amount of energy it would take to like run that would far exceed what it would be worth it being like the result of it being gold. It would cost more energy wise. Kind of like today with cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin, you would, if you were to be running mining farms right now, it would cost you more to run the miner than what you would get out of it. Okay, we're on the last two paragraphs here. But what a packed paragraph we just read. I cannot believe that we had that one part in here. Gives me chills thinking about that. We can project our thoughts onto photographic film. On a more cosmic scale, the firmament of scientific verities has opened into crevices so great that many of those who prefer to stand on solid and familiar ground feel dizzy and disoriented. You see this? They snuck in the firmament stuff. I'll read that one more time. On a more cosmic scale, the firmament of scientific verities has opened into crevices so great that many of those who prefer to stand on solid and familiar ground feel dizzy and disoriented. The possibility of the existence of antimatter, the curvature of space and time, new concepts of gravity and magnetism, the suspected existence of dark planets in our own system. That was Planet X, what I was saying earlier. Imploding suns, novas, and small particles of matter heavier than an entire planet. Quasars and the dark holes in space. An endless universe which grows larger as our telescopic vision extends to millions of undiscovered galaxies. This is the arcane knowledge that awaits us as we rush forward at so accelerated a speed that no mystery should surprise us simply because it does not seem logical. The Bermuda Triangle, an area located on the familiar territory of our planet, although perhaps connected with forces which we do not yet but may soon understand, may be one of these mysteries. As a species, we are now approaching maturity. We cannot retreat from the search for knowledge or new explanations, either in this world or beyond. And there is the end of Charles Berlitz's book, The Bermuda Triangle. So what did we learn from this? This is a question to everybody. What did we learn from this? I want you to let me know in the comments here. And I'll reply to everyone. But what I'd like to do is look into more of these disappearances of ships and planes. There's ample amount of books out there, and I still haven't decided on which book next to take up and read for this deep dive series, but I should be doing that very soon, because I did say on the last show I had narrowed it down to just a few, but as of right now it's still kind of hanging in the air there. But that's it now until next week, where I think we'll just do a show with looking at a few more photographs, expanding a little bit on the concepts that we found in this book, so it'll be a little more freeform of a show. It might be shorter of a show too, but it's alright as long as the content is there. Then that's what I'm more concerned about, is that we have concepts that we can discuss here and just gets the brain moving. But yeah, if we were to reference a few things from this book for next week, if we have to do that, we will. And I actually would like to do that. There's a few other shipwreck books I do have, but that's along with the Great Lakes Triangle. And in fact, I did say I was going to run that. Yeah, I'll give that to you guys today to see right now before we go. But I'll be starting the Great Lakes Triangle series. And so, like, doing all of these different deep dives, they're all starting to be interconnected. But, I mean, the common theme here is that this is us trying to understand where we're at here. What's this world that we live in? Just give me a second. Oh man, okay. Not quite ready yet. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you the intro to the new deep dive series I'll be starting, the Great Lakes Triangle. And I want to do this because I think we're going to find out more information that's going to connect to the Bermuda Triangle, as well as this phenomenon of disappearances. I have other shipwreck books from the Great Lakes that I do want to cover in that too. So we have multiple books here that we can go over just with that other series that I'm going to be starting up soon. But for now, I will tease the intro here, so enjoy. So that's your little preview of the new deep dive series. That'll be the intro for that new show going forward. But I spent a lot of time on that, and I really like how it turned out. So I think it establishes the mood, and yeah, it's just really exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And I do plan on doing those shows on Fridays. So really I should be starting it tomorrow, but I'm not quite ready yet. But the intro's ready. I'm going to line up multiple books for that show. And I think once I do that, like, I'm going to make the order of the books how I want to prepare them and present them. And then we'll roll with that. And we will start researching with those books and seeing what we can find. So that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed this. We will be back next week with part 13 for this deep dive series of the Bermuda Triangle. I'm Stephen Yissil. Thank you for being here at Yissilmissil Productions channel. Please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And check out my other deep dives that I've been doing. Coral Castle, the Chicago film industry, which that is in it about five more weeks, and then that's going to be wrapped up. It's that's probably going to be the shortest series of these deep dives as of right now, ending with I think 15 parts. But this show and the other shows, with the new one being the Great Lakes Triangle, I think those are all going to go past 15 parts. But we're taking them one part at a time. And I'm looking forward to discovering this information and sharing it with you all. And thanks for being here with me on this journey. So, until the next one. Class dismissed.